Hume. Senator McCarthy.
Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, I rise to speak in the Senate tonight on an issue of so great importance to the people of the Northern Territory, to Northern Australia, and indeed to Australians in the Pacific region and all who rely on the ABC's shortwave radio service right across this country. On the 6th of December, the ABC decided to reveal information saying that it would no longer allow shortwave radio to continue beyond January 31st. This was the first time, Mr President, that anyone in Northern Australia had even learned or was even aware that the ABC was considering this drastic change to their lives. One of the incredibly disappointing aspects of this, on top of the announcement itself, is that they only gave 7 weeks' notice, and they provided the information at a time, in particular in the north, when we are incredibly vulnerable to the weather conditions, as it is the wet season. And we're vulnerable to cyclones, to floodings, and to all kinds of unpredictable weather. In fact, even in the Pacific, as recently as earlier this week, the Solomon Islands was receiving warnings about flooding and possible landslides, and people there were being encouraged to listen to shortwave radio, which now no longer exists, because on the 31st of January, shortwave radio was switched off. Why is shortwave radio important to the people of Northern Australia? Because it is the only reliable source of information that people can tune into, rain, hail or shine. It's the only reliable information that people can access because there is no thorough access in terms of internet coverage, in terms of telephone communications, in terms of even satellite phones, Mr President, when satellite phones only rely on whether the sun is shining. And in places like Northern Australia, the sun does not shine, not all the time. And if you're trying to hold that phone, that satellite phone out there to try and get information about the weather or to get emergency details out, or even just to talk to someone because you're feeling isolated and alone and it's something important for your emotional health and well-being, you cannot access it 100%. I explain these things to give the Senate an understanding of the vast remoteness, and I'm not talking about vast the technology yet, I'm talking about vast the remoteness. The remoteness is so great in this country, where people choose to live in various parts of Australia, beautiful parts of Australia. People who farm their properties, people who muster their cattle, people who fish in our seas for their livelihoods, people who also man the coastlines, looking out for illegal fishing boats, monitoring the dugongs and sea turtles around our coasts, people who travel the hundreds and thousands of kilometres across our many roads in our vast areas of country. All of these people listen to shortwave radio. It is their only form of communication. To be told, Mr President, that you who live on an isolated cattle station must now have vast, now this is another word, vast, to talk about a satellite dish, the viewer access satellite television. You on your cattle station must now carry that satellite on your horse as you muster cattle, as you go set up camp out on the Barkly, or as you go across in the VRD. You make sure you take that big satellite and you put it on your horse, because that's the only way you're going to be able to know what's going on in terms of communication. Oh, but there's more. Those of you out in your tinnies, of course, prepare to put that big satellite dish on the end of your boat. As you're out there fishing for your livelihood, wanting to know what the weather patterns are doing, whether there's a cyclone coming, whether a particular creek or waterway is the place to go, just throw that satellite dish on your tinny and you'll be right, mate. And for all those truckies who travel the regions delivering food supplies, mail supplies, just chuck that satellite dish on your truck, mate, and you'll be right too. Because that is what the ABC and that is what the Turnbull government is expecting the people of Northern Australia to do. We don't have the capability yet, Mr President, as our brothers and sisters in the cities of the south, to access the digital technology that we so do want to access, and we do want to have that, but we're not there yet. And we should not be missing out on vital services as a result of someone's brainwave decision to remove the only service that provides the information for all of these categories that I've explained so far. To our Aboriginal communities who need to know what's going on. It's not good enough, Mr President, for the ABC or even the government to say that FM and AM services are accessible when people are telling you it's not. I urge senators, travel out to Northern Australia, find out for yourself. I urge the minister, and I certainly call on the managing director of the ABC to go out to these regions. You know, this is not a call because people feel like making a problem. This is a call that is based on people's livelihood. It is a life and death matter for many people, and I quote that from the Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association. They worry about their pastoralists who remain isolated for long periods of time as a result of their cattle work, people whose own emotional health and well-being is dramatically impacted because of this decision as well. So this is incredibly serious, Mr President, to Northern Australia, and I ask Southern Australia to take a deep breath and to acknowledge when you've made a serious error in judgment. Not to keep passing the buck and saying it's someone else's decision, isn't it bad? To hear the minister stand up today and admit that the consultation process was totally inadequate and the time given to the people of Northern Australia and indeed the Pacific region, 6 weeks over Christmas and New Year, to give them such limited time to respond appropriately. A complete slap in the face, a complete rejection by the ABC towards its own listeners, very loyal listeners, and by this government to accept that that decision is okay. And our members opposite have said that Labor is wanting the Turnbull government to direct the ABC. We're not asking that at all. We're saying to just do your job. Fund the ABC adequately so that these kinds of decisions do not have to be made. In fact, go further. Today you admit in the House to the Senate that consultation was totally inadequate. Well then stop this. Work with the ABC, Minister. Allow the proper consultation process to take place. Reinstate the service and make sure you fund it adequately going forward for all Australians.